Welcome back to Frontier Echoes, the home of heart-touching tales from the Old West. If you love stories of courage, compassion, and redemption under the wide-open skies, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, saddle up, let's get started. The sun had long dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in muted shades of violet and gold. The cold wind of the prairie whispered across the tall grass, carrying the distant cry of a lone coyote. In that quiet, endless stretch of Wyoming plains, a small figure trudged down a dirt road, a little girl no older than 8, holding her mother's hand. Her name was Annie Mae, and beside her walked Clara, her mother, thin, weary, her eyes full of both fear and love. Behind them rolled a squeaky wooden wagon pulled by a tired mule. Inside the wagon lay a baby wrapped in a faded quilt, sleeping against the chill. They had been walking for hours, maybe days, searching for a place to rest. The world had not been kind to them. After losing their small farm to debt and drought, they had nowhere left to go. Clara had heard there was work in the town of Red Rock, but that was still 20 miles away. Her strength was fading fast, and her children were hungry. Just as the last light faded, they saw it. A lonely ranch house standing quiet under the stars, a lantern glowing faintly by the porch. Beside it, a large barn stood, its doors half open, the smell of hay drifting out. Annie tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, maybe we can sleep in there." Clara hesitated. The ranch looked occupied, but she had no choice. Her feet hurt, her baby was cold, and the night air was unforgiving. So she nodded slowly and walked toward the barn. Inside, the soft sound of horses shifting in their stalls filled the air. The place was warm and smelled of straw and life. Annie looked around with wonder, whispering, "Mama, it's like a castle." Clara smiled faintly, exhaustion written all over her face. She found an empty corner of hay, laid her baby down, and wrapped her children close. She thought she'd rest there quietly till morning, unseen and unheard. But life has a way of surprising even the weary. A deep voice came from behind them. "You lost, ma'am." Clara spun around in fear. A tall man stood in the doorway, framed by the lantern light. He wore a dusted hat and long coat, a rope slung around his shoulder, and the look of a man who'd seen both storms and silence. Annie gasped and clung to her mother's arm. Clara stood, trembling. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered. "We didn't mean to trespass. We just needed a place to rest. The children, they're cold and hungry. We'll be gone by dawn." The cowboy looked at them quietly for a long moment. Then he stepped forward, setting down a pail of water. His boots made a low thud on the wooden floor. His name was Samuel Holt, though most folks around called him Sam. He'd been a cattle rancher for nearly 15 years, a man known for his work ethic, but not for his smiles. Since his wife passed away 3 winters ago, he'd lived alone on this land, speaking to no one but his horses and the wind. He kneeled a little, eyes meeting Annie's. "You folks hungry?" Annie nodded shyly. "A little, sir." Sam tipped his hat. "Name's Sam Holt. You're welcome to rest here if you need. Ain't no one left out under my roof." Clara blinked, unsure if she'd heard him right. You'd let us stay." He gave a half smile, the kind that looks like it hasn't been used in a while. "Sure would. Got a pot of stew on the stove. Come inside, get warm. You can wash up after." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she whispered, "Thank you." Inside the small wooden house, the warmth hit them like a miracle. The fireplace crackled, and the smell of beef stew filled the air. Annie's eyes widened as Sam ladled a bowl full and handed it to her. "You eat first, little lady," he said. "Ain't nothin' fills the belly better than a good stew after a cold trail." Annie smiled. A smile Sam hadn't seen in years, not since his own daughter, Sarah, had passed from fever at that same age. Something inside him stirred. As the family ate, Sam sat quietly at the table, sipping coffee and listening to their story. Clara told him how her husband had gone off to work at the rail line and never returned, how the bank took their land, and how she'd been wandering since. When she finished, silence filled the room. Only the fire spoke. Sam leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "World's gone mean these days," he muttered. "But a man's still got a choice to do right." He stood and looked toward the sleeping baby in Clara's arms. You can stay as long as you need. Got plenty of chores round here. Could use an extra hand. Clara's eyes widened. I can work, sir. I can cook, clean, mend fences. Sam waved a hand. Ain't no rush. First, you rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk work. That night, as the wind howled outside, Clara lay awake in the small guest room Sam had offered. She couldn't understand why this stranger would show such kindness. Out here, most men turned away travelers, afraid of thieves or trouble. But this man, this quiet cowboy, had opened his door without hesitation. In the barn, Sam checked on his horses before turning in. He looked up at the stars through the cracks in the roof, his breath turning to mist. Somewhere deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The next morning came with the scent of coffee and sunrise over the valley. Annie ran outside, giggling as she chased the chickens around the yard. Sam watched from the porch, his lips curling into a soft grin. "You got a wild one there," he said to Clara. "She's got her daddy's spirit," Clara replied quietly. Over the next few days, the little family settled into life on the ranch. Clara helped with cooking and laundry. Annie fed the chickens and brushed the horses. Sam began teaching her how to ride one, an old mare named Daisy. Each day, laughter returned to the place. The ranch no longer felt so lonely. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the hills in gold, Annie came running up to Sam. Mr. Sam, look what I found." She held out a small wildflower, purple and delicate. "For you," she said. "Mama says flowers make sad hearts smile." Sam looked at the flower for a long moment before taking it gently. His voice was low. "Well, guess your mama's right." That night, Sam sat by the fire, staring at the flower on the table. He thought about his wife, about Sarah, about all the quiet years he'd spent alone. Maybe, he thought, this family had come here for a reason. Weeks turned into months. The ranch began to bloom again. Fields once dry now shimmered with green. Sam felt purpose again. Something to wake up for, something to protect. But one cold morning in February, a man rode up to the ranch. He was tall, rough-looking, with a scar across his cheek. He carried a revolver on his belt and a look of trouble in his eyes. "Name's Roy Tucker," he said, stepping down from his horse. "I'm looking for a woman named Clara. Says she owes me money." Sam's jaw tightened. "Don't reckon anyone here owes you a thing." Roy sneered. "You're sheltering her, huh? She took off from a wagon camp down near Cheyenne. Left before paying her dues." Inside the house, Clara froze. Annie grabbed her hand. "Mama, who's that man?" Before she could answer, Sam stepped between them and the barn door. "You got business, you take it up with me." Roy smirked, spitting into the dirt. "You think you can hide her, cowboy?" Sam's eyes went cold. "Ain't hidin', nobody. But you raise a hand to her or those kids, you'll find yourself 6 feet under before sundown." The air grew still. Even the horses went quiet. Roy stared at him for a long time, then laughed. "You're a fool, Holt. Ain't worth protectin' a woman like her." Sam's hand hovered near his holster. "Maybe, but I reckon a real man protects folks who can't protect themselves." Roy's smirk faded. He looked at Sam, then at Clara standing behind him, clutching her children. For a moment, something human flickered in his eyes, then he spat again, turned his horse, and rode off down the trail. When the dust settled, Clara collapsed into tears. "I didn't mean to bring trouble, Sam, I just wanted a safe place for my children." Sam placed a hand on her shoulder. "You already found one, ma'am. Ain't nobody runnin' you off this land." From that day on, Clara knew she'd found more than shelter. She'd found a family. Months later, spring came. The valley turned green, the river sang again, and life felt new. Sam built a small schoolhouse nearby for Annie and the children of neighboring ranchers. Clara began teaching there, her voice strong and full of hope. Every Sunday, Sam would sit on the porch, sipping coffee, watching Annie run through the fields with Daisy. He'd tip his hat and smile. One afternoon, Annie came up to him again, this time, wearing a little cowboy hat he'd given her. "Mr. Sam," she said, "Mama says we're gonna plant flowers all around the house. Will you help us?" He chuckled softly. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The three of them worked till sunset, their laughter echoing across the valley. The house that once held silence now overflowed with life. And that night, as the stars came out, Clara stood by the door, looking at Sam. "You saved us, Sam," she said quietly. He shook his head. "No, ma'am, you and that little one saved me." A gentle silence hung between them, the kind that says everything words can't. As months turned to years, the Holt Ranch became a place of warmth for travelers. Folks said if you ever got lost on that long Wyoming trail, there was a place where a kind cowboy would take you in, no questions asked. And on quiet nights, when children from the nearby towns came asking for stories, Sam would sit by the fire and tell them the tale of the night a little girl knocked on his barn door and asked, "Can we sleep here?" He'd pause, smile softly, and say, "Ain't no one left out under my roof." The children would laugh, the fire would crackle, and above them, the stars would shimmer, as if blessing the land where kindness once found its home. So if you ever ride those dusty trails and find yourself tired, hungry, and lost, remember Sam Holt's ranch. Somewhere out there in the wide open west, there's always a barn light shining, waiting for someone who just needs a place to rest. Because kindness, like the stars, never really fades. Thank you for listening to this story on Frontier Echoes. If this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in the power of good hearts and second chances. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Till next time, keep your boots dusty, your spirit strong, and your heart open, because out here on the frontier, every soul deserves a place to call home.